everyone, welcome to another Jumpstart Your Creativity with Justine. Today we are going to be creating this really fun interactive piece here that I created that's a gift card holder and a birthday card. So to get started, you're going to need two pieces of 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 cardstock in the color of your choice, as well as a piece of 3 1/4 by 4 3/4. I used steel gray here from My Favorite Things. So I'm going to grab one of these standard card size 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 pieces, as well as my paper trimmer here. My paper trimmer comes with both a cutting blade and a scoring tool. And I am going to line up my paper at 3 1/2 inches, and I am going to cut from 3/4 inches to 4 3/4 inches. Now this is going to give me that flap there that really just pops up and makes the card interactive. I'm then going to turn my card 180 degrees to the other side, and I am going to once again cut the same thing, 3 1/4 by 4 3/4 while it's lined up at 3 1/2 inches there. And you'll see that I have those two lines here cut out in the middle of my card base. The next thing I need to do is just cut the bottom here. So I am going to now line up once again my cardstock at 4 3/4 inches, and I am going to cut from one line to the other. So now I have a rectangle where 3 sides only are cut out. If you happen to have a little piece that's still stuck, you can use your scissors or your paper trimmer to just trim that extra little bit. I know when you're measuring on your actual cutting blade area, sometimes things can be a little off. So now I have this rectangle with a closed side. Next thing, I'm going to grab my score tool. Now you can use a score pal for this, a scoring board, a stylus, and a ruler. It's completely up to you if you don't have this function on your paper trimmer. And the important thing is to make sure that the cut edge of the side there is on the right, going off of your paper trimmer. Now I'm going to once again with the scoring blade, I'm going to line it up at 4 inches, and I'm going to put a score line from one cut side to the other. What's nice with the scoring blade is you'll actually feel it on your hand where to stop and start. And then I am going to do another score line, and this one is going to be at 2 3/8. And the last one is going to be at 3/4. So you've now made 3 score lines. You've done the most complicated part now if you're following along. Just wanted to mention as well that I got this tutorial off of Split Coast Stampers, but I've modified it slightly to fit my needs. So now I'm going to take the other piece of 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 cardstock, and I'm going to line it up perfectly with the area that I just cut and scored. I'm also going to use a piece of washi tape or purple tape to hold the two pieces of cardstock together. If you have a paper punch that can do this, then perfect. You can just go ahead and punch a little notch into here for the interactive part. I don't have one, so I'm using the My Favorite Things stitched circle die in the smallest size, and I am going to run that through my die cutting machine, and it's going to actually cut through both pieces of cardstock with no problem using the Gemini Junior. If it doesn't cut through both of them, it's more likely that you have an indent, so just remove the first layer and then line up your die and cut it again. So I'm just going to remove the tape now so that both of my cardstock are now separated once again, and you'll see that I have a little notch there that I'm going to be able to reach in to pull out the pull tab later. So now I have all 3 of my pieces sitting in front of me, and I'm going to go ahead and grab the 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 piece that has not been cut or scored. So this is the only one that has the little pull tab area on it. And I'm going to grab this Spotlight stencil from My Favorite Things. So you can see here it's really cool because it really coordinates all the products I'm using together today with the 3 Singers stamp from the Friendship Rocks stamp set. There are 3 singers, so you can have your spotlight going straight into the middle or off to the sides for your little backup singers or your backup dancers, however you want to say it. And I'm just going to secure down the cardstock here, and I'm going to make sure that I stick the washi tape on the back of my hand as well to prevent it from tearing my cardstock. I'm using some Distress Oxide ink here in Squeezed Lemonade to add some color, so it's going to be like the spotlight on my card. Now you have to use here an Oxide ink or a pigment-based ink, because if not, if you try to use just regular Distress, it's just going to get lost in the color of the cardstock if you're using a dark cardstock. Now I'm just going to set that piece off to the side and grab the piece that I cut and fold. I'm going to fold some of the score lines here just to give them a little bit of a give so that when I pull later, they're just going to come up naturally. So I've reinforced those score lines just by bending them with my fingers. Now I'm going to add some red sticky tape here. This is perfect tape for when you're doing interactive cards or box cards because it's extremely sturdy and strong, and you need something like that for a card like this. So I'm going to go ahead and add 2 pieces of the red tape onto the side, one along the bottom, and then also one along the bottom of the area that we cut out. So just in that bottom flap there before the first score line. I'm using my scissors to cut it down as I go, just to make things a little bit easier. So now I'm going to go ahead and remove the red tape from the rectangle, so the second piece there in the middle. I find it easier with the red tape to get the backing off if I go in from the side rather than trying from the very top and bottom of the tape. And I'm going to add that smaller piece of cardstock that we cut out earlier. That is the piece that measures 3 1/4 by 4 3/4. And I'm going to line that up perfectly along the bottom of that rectangle that was cut out. And I'm just going to run my fingers over top of the adhesive to make sure it's stuck. I'm then going to remove the other 3 pieces of adhesive. Now all 3 pieces of my cardstock are going to be used and my actual base idea of my card is finished. So I'm just going to grab that spotlight piece here. You want the spotlight facing towards you, and then you want the sticky side with that adhesive to go directly on top. And I just put it upwards there so that I could line them up perfectly, and I ran my fingers over top when I was satisfied to make sure that it worked. And now you can see here that my pull tab pulls up and down to reveal the spotlight. So I'm going to set that card off to the side now, and I'm going to grab my die that is called Take the Stage. This here comes with a curtain set, so it's perfect for any sort of scene cards that are where people are performing on stage, or if you want to create a fun interactive card with curtains. So it comes with the 2 sides of the curtains, the little, I have no idea the vocabulary for it, but the little hanging pieces that go along it. And I also went ahead and grabbed the Friendship Rock stamp, and I colored the 3 ladies, the 3 singers here using my Copic markers. I decided to do that off screen because the tutorial is more or less about the interactive card and not about the coloring itself. So I'm now going to cut those out with the coordinating dies, and then I'm going to cut out this really fun Take the Stage die. And I'm going to put all of these pieces here and cut them out in some pink cardstock. Okay, so at this point my card still looks like a card. I pull up my pull tabs to reveal the spotlight, and I'm going to put my singer that is facing forward inside the surprise panel, so to say. And at this point, my card still looks like a card. It's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, fits in a normal envelope, everything is good. Now, when I was creating this, though, I really wanted to use the Tutu Trio stamp. I wanted to have the curtains and it to be like a stage and everything like that. And that's where things got a little bit complicated. And I did realize that it was actually impossible at this point to keep the card a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So I went ahead and I added the curtains here using some liquid glue, but I had to make sure the curtains were not glued in a way that would interfere with the pull tab. So I had to glue them off to the side, which meant they were actually going off of the 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch base. Don't worry about that though, because in the end I managed to fix it, so it turned into a 6 by 6 card. So if I were to do things differently, I would have actually created my card to be a little bit wider. Not necessarily the area that I cut out that is interactive, but the actual sides. You can see I have about a 1/2 inch on each side, or 3/4 of an inch. I would have made that area larger. So I'm going to stick on my curtains, and you can see now I have the girls stuck on there as well. It's important when gluing down your singers that they are glued only to the middle section of the score lines. So you have the very bottom piece that's scored. Then you have the middle piece, and that's where your glue is going to go. Because if you were to glue it down completely flat, they wouldn't actually be able to raise up and down. And it also makes the girls look a little bit more interactive because the legs and arms and head aren't glued down, so they actually look like they're popping off the page. I'm now going to add the areas that hang down in the front here with some glue, being careful to avoid the area of glue where the pull tab is. So you don't want to have any adhesive on the pull tab or else it won't work. You just want it on either side of that half circle. It's also completely up to you whether you want to add those middle pieces in, and if you feel like it's blocking the pull tab a little bit too much, then that's fine too. So one thing I noticed is that the curtains weren't long enough for the 5.5-inch card length. So it looked like the girls were kind of just floating in midair and it didn't look all that nice. So I grabbed a piece of lighter gray cardstock, 4.25 by about, you only need about 3/4 of an inch to an inch, and I just added that there. And once again, you don't want to put any adhesive on that 3/4 rectangle that you have, because then it's not going to pull up, obviously. I'm just going to go ahead and trim the area. I wanted to see what it looked like against the girl's feet, so I didn't have a specific measurement in mind. I just cut a piece of cardstock that I knew was slightly bigger and trimmed it down. So now it looks like the girls are actually on a stage instead of just randomly in the middle of the air. And again, if I were to go back and redo this card, I would have made that light gray area to be the same width as the curtains, so that it didn't just have that weird little half rectangle or half square in the bottom. I'm now going to take one of the sentiments from the Friendship Rocks stamp set and I'm going to cut it in half because this is really long and I need something that is quite short. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stamp this using some Versamark ink and heat emboss it using some white embossing powder. So now that I'm finished that, I can add my gift card if I have a gift card that I want to put in there. So I just pull the pull tab out and you can stick the gift card right on top of the tab that comes out from the top. And I'm just using like a bookstore rewards card because I don't have a gift card on hand right now, just to show you the idea of it. And so that's the end of today's card tutorial. Now, I found it looked weird. It had an area where these curtains are coming off and there's no base on it, so what I decided to do was attach it to a 6x6 piece of white cardstock. Now by attaching it to a 6x6 piece of white cardstock, I can ensure that it fits in a 6x6 envelope, as well as it almost turns into like a little painting, so someone could actually have this in a little frame if they wanted to after. It's completely up to you. So now you can see how it works. The slider reveals the lead singer as well as a gift card. So I hope you enjoyed this card tutorial today, and I hope you enjoyed this gift card idea, and I hope it was okay that I let you know what I would have done differently if I had really thought about it the first time. But sometimes when you put it all together, that's your learning experience, and I hope that if you wanted to turn this into a card, you understood what I would have done differently in order to do that. If you would like to subscribe to the My Favorite Things channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, as well as check out some other videos there that are suggested below. And I'll see you in September for another video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye!